الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وآله وأصحابه أجمعين. So today we're going to be talking about one of the mothers of the believers, Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, which is Salamah radiallahu anha. It's really interesting to recognize that when you look at all of the wives of the Prophet himself, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, a lot of them left us with good advice, a lot of lessons that we can benefit from by looking at their life and making a practical implementation of that in your own life. So the goal behind today is not just to look at what Salamah and how she lived her life, but also on how we can apply that to our daily life. And the reason personally I chose Salamah is because Salamah radiallahu anha, she relates a lot to how we grow up today, especially living in Jersey, especially in the United States. She actually comes from a very, very noble family, from Banu Makhzum. And her father, Suhail Abu Umayyah ibn Mughira, very, very wealthy family, and they come from royalty, very well established. You might say, well, how does that relate to us today? You know, it's sad that we don't recognize the ni'mah that Allah gave us. But just look around you and look at the condition of the ummah, the condition of Islam around the world. You're in royalty. You're living a life of luxury. The fact that you can eat whatever you want, fruits that only grow certain times of year, you eat them whenever you want. The fact that you can drive, you have your freedom to do and worship as you please. It's a barakah, it's a ni'mah, it's a blessing that Allah Azza wa Jal gave us. And we shouldn't forget that. Because the moment you forget that, we'll be tried with that. And that's why we should always ask Allah Azza wa Jal to alleviate the suffering and the hardship on the Muslims around the world. And then you recognize the royalty and the magnificent lifestyle that you live. And then you start thanking Allah for all of the good and everything that happens in your life. Her mother was Atika bint Amr ibn Rabi'ah. And also, knowing that her status will actually play a pretty big role when you notice just some of the things that she went through. So we mentioned that her name was Hind bint Suhail, or her father also had a nickname Abu Umayyah. She had a couple of children. One was Salamah, that's how she got her nickname Salamah. She also had Umar, she also had Zainab, and she had a daughter named Durra, but changed her name to Ruqayya. And her husband was Abu Salamah. If you look at her early life, she and her husband, actually Abdullah, Abu Salamah, they accepted Islam, one of the early people who accepted Islam. Shortly after Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. So she was one of the early people who accepted Islam. And they suffered a lot in the Meccan period. They suffered a great deal. Something that maybe we might not be so subject to. But the fact that how much they suffered, the Prophet ﷺ gave the okay, the green light to some of those Muslims to make the first hijrah. To make the first hijrah to Abyssinia. And this was because you could tell that Mecca wasn't so safe. People were being harmed, terrorized, hurt, beat, killed, just to denounce that they believe in Allah. And that's crazy. And if you look at it, what are they doing by harming anybody by believing in something different? And this is the level of extremes that society goes to when you don't conform to their norms. They're afraid of the unknown. But the more that we, alhamdulillah, show that Islam has nothing to do with any of these acts that some of the people display, a small number of them, in the name of Islam, the more that people will recognize that this is a beautiful religion, and that people will wind up adopting and accepting this religion. Because that has to be our goal. That was the goal of all the companions. Living in this country, it's a ni'mah. But if we don't think that our neighbors, our goal is to maybe make our neighbor accept Islam or give them the message, we're failing at our goal in this country. We have to be people who are good in business dealings, who are good with one another, who are showing that this is because of Islam. I know a brother that every time he leaves a tip in the hotel when he travels, he puts money on the counter, but he writes, thanks for such a great service, Muhammad. His name's not Muhammad. But he does it as a form of da'wah, as a form to show them that Muslims still leave tips. And a lot of non-Muslims, they don't do that anymore. They'll say, well, that's their job. But we're people who appreciate when people do nice things for us. Things like that, these little things that you have to think about to have wisdom in how you interact with the non-Muslims in this country has to be so that you could show them the beauty of Islam. Some of the historians, they mentioned in this hijrah of Abyssinia that the reason they came back to Mecca is they thought that the state of the Muslims changed for the better. And unfortunately, when they came back, they found that it was worse. And it had been worse than when they left it the first time. So after a period of time, the Prophet ﷺ, he ordered that they would make a hijrah, the complete hijrah. The problem here, by the way, is when Salamah was about to leave, how do I equate this for us? This is almost like a very, very important person in our society that is going to abandon this society. So they, out of jealousy or out of trying to protect their society, these non-Muslims didn't allow Salamah to leave. Abu Salamah was not from the same tribe. So they said, listen, if you're going to go, go. We don't have rights over you. This is what her family said. They caught them before they were making the hijrah. And she said, and she tried to leave. And so Abu Salamah was able to escape, but they wouldn't let him come to his wife. They held him back, their tribe held him back. And then it got heated, very, very heated. Why? Because they said, of royalty, we're not going to let you take her. We have more rights over you than her. But then what happens is the Abu Salamah's tribe sees this, and now it's all about pride. May Allah protect us from such a thing. They came and they said, fine, you're taking her. This son, we have more rights to him than you. So they grabbed the son, Salamah. But then they said no, so they grabbed him as well. And they said, some of the historians, they pulled this poor boy so hard that they dislocated his shoulders. Just out of pride, who's going to keep him and who's not going to keep him. And they separated them. And this went on for an entire year. An entire year that she was held captive, or not captive because they wouldn't do that to a woman of royalty, but they held her at like house arrest. They wouldn't allow her to reunite for her with Salamah. And she cried, Salamah, for an entire year, waiting for her son. And her health wasn't so good until somebody, Uthman ibn Talha, he saw this and he said, what's the case with this woman? He said, she's of nobility, she's of royalty. Why is she crying like this, put away in this regard? They gave him the story. They told him the whole background story. He said, no. He said, a woman of royalty like that can't be treated this way. He went and he made sure that she would be reunited with Salamah, and he even ensured that their safety all the way to reunite with Abu Salamah. He ensured that, this one act of kindness that he did. And he reunited them with her husband. Later on though, after the hijrah, in the battle of Uhud, Abu Salamah actually suffered some wounds that he would later die from. And even the Prophet ﷺ, on his deathbed, Abu Salamah would be making dua that he would say, and he would say, oh Allah, give me in return something good from which only you, exalted and almighty, can give. And Salamah would also make such a dua at her husband's funeral, oh Allah, give me something better. And even the Prophet ﷺ, when he came upon Abu Salamah at his deathbed, he saw that he was passing away, and after he passed away, the Rasul ﷺ said, when the vision opened wide of Abu Salamah, he said, when the soul is taken away, the vision will follow. Yani the last thing that will depart from the soul is that person's eyes, and that's how death was confirmed at that time. But interesting, Salamah, after his death, she started wondering who is Allah Azza wa Jal going to send her that's better than Abu Salamah, because of how much he loved her and how much he treated her so well. So she would just be wondering about that. because that was the dua she was told to make. Oh Allah, give me something better than this. Ahlan khayrun min ahli. Things like this, that when a person passes away. She's a very, very opinionated person. Very opinionated person. After her iddah, the 4 months, 10 days, she got several proposals for marriage. And none other than Abu Bakr would come to ask for her hand in marriage. And guess what? She said no. She rejected it. I'm not interested. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Who's better? After all of the Anbiya, that Abu Bakr comes after the prophets and messengers. And she said no. After Abu Bakr, Umar came to propose for her. And she responded the same way. Until later on, the Prophet ﷺ, he proposed to her. And she didn't immediately say yeah, by the way. So she said, Ya Rasulullah, I have 3 characteristics, and I'm a woman who's extremely jealous. And I'm advanced in age, and I'm a woman who has children. But I'm afraid that you'll see something in me, from my jealousy, that will anger you and cause Allah Azza wa Jal to punish me. So she's concerned. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ, he has other wives. So she's just expressing her jealousy. And this is common, this is normal. The wives of the Prophet, they were jealous of one another. And that's absolutely fine, nothing. Sometimes we fantasize that this is just, they're going to be in harmony and everything's going to work out perfect. But look how the Prophet ﷺ, with his wisdom, he actually validated her concerns. He didn't say, well, hey, this is Allah permitted it. You're going to be jealous of something Allah permitted? You see how I know a lot of the brothers today, they respond with their wives? Look at what he said. He said, regarding your jealousy, I pray to Allah the Almighty to remove it from you. So ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to remove the jealousy from you. There's nothing He can do about it. And then he said, and regarding your age, I'm afflicted with the same problem. Now I'm getting older. He said, I'm afflicted with the same problem as you. And he said, and regarding your children are like my children. Become mahram to him, same thing. He said, your children are like my children. So she got content with that and she accepted the Prophet ﷺ. And this is something that shows you very interesting, that the iman, that a person's iman is tested in the time of fitna. And how you respond, you look at the reward that Allah Azza wa Jal could give you. So when we come through these different trials in our life, the moment that something happens to you, just say Alhamdulillah, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, or Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, things like this, so that don't say anything except that it's pleasing to Allah. And it's shocking. You might not know where this ni'mah or where this blessing or what's going to come after it. Well, I know a brother, Allah as my witness, he lost a very important job. Very important job. And he told me well into the 6 figures. And he was so upset with that. And he would just say, Alhamdulillah. Some people told them to sue his company. That's wrong. Maybe it's discrimination. Sue. He said, no. He said, that's not the characteristic of a Muslim. I'm not going to sue. He said, what am I going to do? Waste 2 years? And they'll table it, and they'll put better lawyers, and I'm going to represent. He said, for what? He said, Alhamdulillah, Allah will give me something better. He said, oh my God, but that kind of opportunity is like, now what will you do? Alhamdulillah, he's doing even better than he was before. You might say, Tab, how? He worked so many years to advance to that position, and then they just removed him from that, just like that. He said, Alhamdulillah. This kind of contentment, when the fitna strikes, how is your response? Some people, the fitna takes them the wrong way. May Allah protect us. It's why me? Why Allah? I pray. I come to Fajr. I treat my wife good. I spend time with the kids. Why me? May Allah protect us. Allah Azza wa Jalla has hikmah that we don't know about. That's why He's Allah. And if you worship Allah every prayer like you said you did, then you rely upon Allah's wisdom, that what He's doing is good for us. And you respond in something that is only pleasing to Allah. She was also one of the people, she was blessed with seeing Jibreel. She was blessed with seeing Jibreel in the person form. Salamah said, I was sitting with the Prophet ﷺ, and a man walked in whom I thought was Dihya al-Kilbi, the companion who Jibreel used to take the shape of in the human form, kind of look like him. And she said he sat with the Prophet ﷺ for some time, so I got up and left. He then disappeared. I don't know where he went. It's not like in thin air. I didn't see where he went. So the Prophet ﷺ, she asked, and she said, did you see him? The Prophet ﷺ asked her, said, did you see him? She said, yeah, I saw Dihya. He said, and he smiled to her. He said, he got on the pulpit, he got on the minbar afterwards, because you know the Prophet ﷺ, his houses were very close to the masjid. So a lot of people don't picture that. So it was close by, and then he went over to the minbar, he got on the minbar, and he said, Jibreel came to me, so-and-so, and he gave a khutbah. This is a blessed thing. Remember the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned that if a person had such perfect iman, that the malaika, they would see the malaika, and they would even shake hands with them. Yani that tells you of how perfect her iman was in Islam, in believing in Allah in the last day. Also, she was a wife who was very supportive of her husband. In the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, when they came to Mecca to make Hajj, you know, they were kind of stopped, and they reached a negotiation back and forth that they would come back the following year. And it was a tough negotiation. They even made Ali radiallahu anhu in the contract, remove Ar-Rahman from the contract, remove Rasulullah, things like that. It was a very tough negotiating. But for the benefit of the ummah and to avoid spilling blood, the Prophet ﷺ agreed that they'll come back next year and they won't make Hajj this year. So then after they reached the agreement, the Prophet ﷺ stood in front of the companions and he said, sacrifice, slaughter the animals, and shave your heads. Why? Because you know, unlike us today, in Hajj, the person used to bring the animal that they were going to slaughter with them. That's why in some of the books of fiqh, there's a whole list of how the animal should be in good health and things like that. So he said, slaughter your animals and shave your heads. Nobody moved. They didn't move. The Prophet ﷺ got a little stressed by that. So he went inside the tent, and Salamah was in there, and he said, Ya Salamah, I don't know what to do. He said, they're not listening to me. And she said, Ya Rasulullah, they'll listen to you. Just you go out and slaughter the animal and shave the head, and they'll follow. And just as soon as they did that, as soon as the Prophet ﷺ went out, he slaughtered the animal and shaved his head, all of the companions followed and immediately did that. They didn't not do it out of disrespect or out of disobeying the Prophet ﷺ. They're doing it out of emotional support. Meaning what? They're trying to tell the Prophet ﷺ, listen, we're with you. We're with you to the end. If it means we have to go to war to defend that our freedoms and things like that, we're willing to. Yani they're trying to show that we're ready. We're men. We're ready to take a stand. And that's one of the hikmahs that some of the scholars would mention in Hajj. You uncover the right shoulder. They said, why? Because you're showing that you're in good shape. That's mashallah today when we go to Hajj and we uncover the shoulder. I don't know about the shape. Maybe everyone else is comfortable. Oh, look at these guys. And we're fine. What shape are we in? Yani? But these Sahaba, they were in excellent shape. And that's what they're telling the Prophet ﷺ, we're ready to go if business needs to happen over here. But the Prophet ﷺ in such a tough time, can you imagine after those negotiating, going back and forth, after coming back and telling the Prophet, the companions to do such and such, and they refused. Who did he turn to? He turned to his wife for advice. How many of us, we take our wife for a person as an advisor? Some people will say, yes, Salam, great, you want us not to do that? You know what she's going to tell us? You don't love me enough. That's what she's going to tell us. Then maybe you don't. Say things to her, I love you. She is an asset. She's an excellent partner for you. And that's how you should treat her in such a manner. Unfortunately today they devalue their kind of, their thoughts and things like this. And yet Salamah maybe saved something greater from happening by just giving the Prophet ﷺ this advice. So do you turn to your spouse for asking for advice? Wallahi, I'm having a tough time at work. I have a question. What would you do in this situation? Or, you know, I'm having this type of thing. What do you think? And you'd be shocked. You'll be shocked. And this also shows that the wife being a very supportive wife in the decisions that her husband is making, as long as, alhamdulillah, they're nothing against Islam. And so much so that she is a revered woman, that Allah Azza wa Jal will even reveal ayah in the Quran in a response to a question by Salamah. She asked the Prophet ﷺ, I don't hear Allah mentioning the women in the hijrah. So Allah revealed verse 135 in Surah Al Imran, where Allah says, وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا فَعَلُوا فَاحِشَةً أَوْ ظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ ذَكَرُوا اللَّهَ فَاسْتَغْفَرُوا لِذُنُوبِهِمْ وَمَنْ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَلَمْ يُصِرُّوا عَلَى مَا فَعَلُوا وَهُمْ يَعْلَمُونَ. That Allah Azza wa Jalla revealed, and for those who when they have committed fahisha, like bad illegal sexual intercourse, even if you will, or wrong themselves with evil, remember Allah and ask forgiveness for them for their sins, and none can forgive their sins except Allah, and do not persist in what is wrong, in the wrong that they have done while they know. Allah revealed this ayah in the Quran specifically to a question that Salamah asked. And this is very important to recognize that the status that Allah Azza wa Jal gives these women in the Quran, and that all of the believers are obviously on that same level playing field. She was an expert in Sharia, especially the rulings of foster relations and rida'a, as well as talaq. But she wasn't one of the companions that was well known for giving fatwa. She recorded 387 ahadith. She recorded them on behalf of the Prophet ﷺ that she heard from him. But like Ibn al-Qayyim, he said among the companions of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he said there's those which I learned of them giving fatwa, which were about 130 something, about 130, between the men and the women. The main companions were 7. He said Umar ibn Khattab, the main ones who would give fatwa, Umar ibn Khattab, Ali ibn Abi Talib, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Aisha, Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, Zayd ibn Thabit, Abdullah ibn Abbas, and Abdullah ibn Umar. He said, Ibn Hazm said also, he said the fatwas given by each of them would constitute a huge volume. Just those 7 companions. You could write volumes on each one of their fatwa. And he said the companions about which a mediocre amount of fatwa were reported, just a minor amount, but they did give some, was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Salamah, the mother of the believers, Anas ibn Malik, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, Abu Hurairah, Uthman ibn Affan, Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, Abdullah ibn al-Zubayr, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, Salman al-Farisi, Jabir ibn Abdullah, and Mu'adh ibn Jabal. And he said these fatwas given by about 13 companions would make up just another set of a volume. So then we ask ourselves, how did she tell us to benefit from being the wife of the Prophet ﷺ? First of all, we mentioned she was a very supportive wife. And she believed in Allah in the last day to such the extent she perfected her iman. She made her iman in such a good manner that Allah allowed her to see Jibreel, and that Allah would reveal an ayah answering a question that she posed to the Prophet ﷺ. But she taught us how to worship Allah in private. How to worship Allah in private. She mentioned, the fasting, the 3 days of every lunar month. We're used to fasting maybe the 13th, 14th, and 15th. But actually the Prophet ﷺ, he would mix it up sometimes. He didn't always just fast the 13th, 14th, 15th. Sometimes, like she reported, she said the Prophet ﷺ, he used to fast sometimes 3 days of every month, which was the Monday and Thursday of the first week of that month, and the Monday of the following week. So for example, if you fasted this past Monday and Thursday, which was the first month of Rajab, the first week of the month of Rajab, then if you fasted this following Monday, this was one of the sunnah of fasting of the Prophet ﷺ. And so, by the way, mixing up your ibadah like that will allow you to benefit from it, instead of making it robotic. And she even mentioned that one of the types of fasting the Prophet ﷺ, he used to love doing, was fasting Saturdays and Sundays. And he would say, they are the 2 Eids of the polytheists, and I love to act contrary to what they do. Even though there's some debate about it, but it seems that a lot of the scholars reported it as authentic, like Ibn Khuzaymah. And then you recognize that these kind of different types of fasting are types that we should implement, because they're all part of the sunnah. Like for example, when we would study hadith, and the Prophet ﷺ was reported about him that he prayed witr as 3, and also 5, and also 7, and also 9, in odd numbers, one of our teachers told us it's incumbent upon a student of knowledge to at least pray with it every so often, changing it. 3, sometimes 4, 5, sometimes 7, in an odd number. That it's incumbent, because why? You revive a sunnah. You're reviving something that the Prophet ﷺ, peace and blessings be upon him, he used to do. And also regarding Jazakallah khair. And regarding how he used to pray in Qiyam. You see, all of these things were the Prophet ﷺ getting closer to Allah. She said every verse the Nabi, he used to recite in Qiyam, he used to contemplate that verse. Versus us just speeding through. And even just praying Qiyam to begin with. That's something that we should perhaps ponder about. And some of the supplications he used to recite a lot. One of them, he used to say, Allahumma inni as'aluka ilman nafi'an. وَرِزْقًا طَيِّبًا وَعَمَلًا مُتَقَبِّلًا. That he used to say, Oh Allah, I ask you beneficial knowledge, goodly provision, and accepted deeds. And deeds that are accepted, O Allah. But the most supplicated that Salamah said, he used to say, he said, Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. That, Oh Allah, he used to say, that, oh the changer of hearts, make my heart upon your religion. Make my heart firm upon your religion. So she asked the Prophet ﷺ, why do you say that, Ya Rasulullah? He said, Oh Salamah, verily there is no human being except that his heart is between the 2 fingers of the fingers of Allah. So whomever He wills, He will make steadfast, and whomever He wills, He would cause to deviate. And this is very true. You see a lot of people, their iman is so weak. They attend one course in college and they come back telling their father, well, you know, I didn't choose Islam. I'm atheist. Or weird things like that. Why? Because some philosopher posed him a question he didn't know how to answer. And that's scary. And that's why we should learn before we enter these kind of learning environments, these universities, to teach these kids to have a great foundation. She taught us how to deal with their wives. The Prophet ﷺ taught us that, for example, how he used to allocate time to them. Ibn Kathir, he reported that part of the Prophet's practice, he would visit each one of his wives, spend time with them, and the last wife he would spend time with would be the one that he's going to spend the night with her. He would do this after Salat al-Asr. So a lot of us don't spend that quality time with our family. We know that there's work, we know there's all kinds of things, but you have to be an all-around person, being fair with all of the things and responsibilities that you have. She taught the women of this ummah how to present yourselves, how to present themselves outside of the home. She said, for example, if a woman's dress was long and it drags and it gets dirty from walking, they asked the Prophet ﷺ about the woman who drags with her clothes. Why? Because the wives and the female believers, they were concerned that maybe their feet would show. So when the Prophet ﷺ, he told them about isbal, it shows the default ruling in everything applies to both men and women. Because how the companions, Salamah responded. She said, Ya Rasulullah, she said, well, we're afraid that part of our feet will show. She said, so the Prophet ﷺ permitted them, for the women, that they can have their abaya or their jalabiyah drag up to 1 arm length. That's the max. And then when asked about it being dirty or not, the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, the land it will be purified by the land. Yani it will be purified by the ard. There's nothing that will make it najis. Don't worry what drags and things like that. It will be purified as it drags. This is specifically for the women. And today, unfortunately, we are getting shorter and tighter and more revealing. May Allah Azza wa Jalla protect us. But she also told us about the men. It didn't just stop there. She taught us that the favorite clothing of the Prophet was the qamis. And this comes closest today is like the Pakistani one that comes like to the knees. That, yeah, what do you call it?
Kurta.
What?
Kurta.
Kurta?
Yeah.
Kurta, this one. This is the closest to the qamis. By the way, it doesn't mean like, alhamdulillah, I'm doing a sunnah. Don't worry about that. That was a dress of his time, but it's showing you the importance of covering the private. That's what we learned from that. So if you can wear something, if you're in a business attire, if you're able to not tuck your shirt in, it's better. That's why you'll find a lot of scholars, they don't tuck their shirt in. That's why you find a lot of them, they'll wear a suit jacket above their their garments, things like that, to cover. Very important that we also forget that we have awrah also. Unfortunately, one of the fashions of today is wearing something so tight, and it's weird, it's just disgusting actually also, because I see it all the time in Manhattan. But this is something that we learn from and benefiting from how Salamah told us that the Prophet ﷺ, he liked to be. And the last two things that I'll leave us with that we can also benefit from, she always liked to help other people. She liked to help others. Al-Hasan al-Basri, his mother, Khayra, was actually the servant of al-Mu'mineen, Salamah, radiallahu anha. And she occasionally looked after Al-Hasan. And look at the asset that Al-Hasan al-Basri gave back to this ummah. You see, it's investing in the generation after us. They said he had his own madhab from how knowledgeable he was. It never was adopted because most of the madhab that we have today, the ones that survived, were politically adopted for one reason or another. But Al-Hasan al-Basri had opinions, then he had an entire fiqh, he had entire volumes of his knowledge, mashallah. And why? Because he sat there and he was, Salamah took the time to teach him and look after him. And are we following this kind of practice? Where the people around us, we're looking to benefit them? Or is it just, let's stick with my family, like I hear a lot of people say, that they won't get involved, they won't help other people. Why? Because it brings problems. What problems does it bring? Oh, when you start getting involved with people, all sorts of problems, mixing and all this stuff, and it's a headache, and people tell you about their problems, and this happened and that happened. But maybe you can help them. Maybe you can avoid them getting into a worse situation. Sacrifice people. We have to care about the people around us, about the ummah. These youngsters that are in the masjid, the way that we treat them will affect them a long time. I came across sisters in the college campus, and they'll tell me things like, I don't enter a masjid. Why? She doesn't wear hijab. Oh, all you guys are going to do is judge me. Why I don't wear hijab? Why I don't wear hijab? I'm not saying it's not required, I'm not ready. Everybody has their own fitna. But she said, what? She scolded. Oh, sister, go in the back and go here. You don't know how Allah Azza wa Jalla will guide her. And yet, who are we? We put masjid police, This is not the way it was. If the Prophet ﷺ let the delegation of Najran, the Christians from Najran, sleep in the masjid. This is non-Muslims. And then we sit there and we criticize some of the sisters, and then they move completely away from the masjid. How much ilm is she losing? How much is she, the knowledge she's missing out on now? And the kids, some of them, we scare them to death. And yet the Prophet ﷺ, in the middle of a khutbah, he saw Al-Hasan and Hussein running around and nobody was getting them. He went down, he picked them up, and he took them. And he stopped his khutbah to do that. He didn't say, oh, where's Fatima? Come get your kids. No, he didn't do that. We have to be a community who's very welcoming. This is how Salamah taught us that the Prophet ﷺ was. She implemented that in her life. And the evidence behind that is, look at what Al-Hasan al-Basri did. And you can believe this, that she gets all of the ajr that he did. All of it. And it doesn't decrease from either one of them, like the Prophet ﷺ he mentioned. That a person who teaches and benefits others in a good manner, they get that entire reward without diminishing from the other. Completely. You see how they think? The investment of the akhirah. When you're in your grave life, you're going to wish that these points, that you're that person in the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ he mentioned, that he said that a person will be in their grave and they will see abundance of rewards coming to them. And so, Allah, where is this coming from? I kind of know my deeds, I didn't do things like that. And he will say, because you bet a child that you left behind supplicating for you, or a deed that was perpetually helping others. You see? And that's why when the imam or these non-profit organizations come up and they say, it's a sadaqah jariyah, help out. It's mind-blowing that we're not immediately just automatically saying, where's the box, guys? Here, something. $1, $5, $10, anything. Anything. Don't be ashamed. Well, this is what you can afford, put it, and Allah will give it back to you, and you'll find that a person who doesn't hold back, Allah will never hold back from giving them. Will not withhold barakah from coming to them. That's how they are. And when you think about these young ones in the masjid, you don't know who he comes out to be. What? You know, today we have no, for example, Islamic advisor to the President of the United States. He said, what are you talking about? Yeah, did we ever think about that as a ummah? That maybe we should come together and form a method that we can recommend someone as an advisor to the President of the United States. Why? The other religions have that they just say, you know, I think this will affect our people negatively. He doesn't have to take it or not, but he can just be a voice for us. What if one of these young ones become that? That's amazing. And you helped all of this khair. You helped all of that perpetually just by showing him the beauty of Islam and being welcoming. And last but not least, there's some false claims about her, just to clarify, that some people said that after the Prophet ﷺ, his death, that she became an imam. And Aisha radiallahu anha also became an imam out of the wives of the Prophet. This is not true at all. That's not true at all. That the fact that just because they sit there and they answer verdicts and they were very knowledgeable and they were fuqaha and they were scholars in their own outright, doesn't make them become an imam. Some of these people, progressives and things like that, they use Salamah and Aisha to say that the women can now give khutbah to Jum'ah and all of these weird things. Absolutely weird. And a shame that they attribute such a thing to such a noble woman, both of them. She died in the 64th year of Hijrah, although it's disputed about the year that she died, and she was buried in Al-Baqi', in the cemetery where most of the companions are buried, right in Mecca, that you see it over there. And she was the last surviving of the Prophet's wives. And I ask Allah Azza wa Jal that we benefit from the mother of the believers, because all of the advice that she gave us, all of the hadith that she related to us, like all of the rest of the mothers of the believers, alhamdulillah, it's like your own mother giving you advice, but even almost more important. This is a woman who cared for this ummah just as much as anyone else, any one of the other women of wives of the Prophet. So take her advice strongly, try to implement it in your life, and don't forget that make the intention that, for example, Sha'ban, the month of Sha'ban will be coming up. So try to fast that Monday, the first Monday of Sha'ban, and the first Thursday, and the first Monday. And then make these kind of du'at that we mentioned. And also, if you have a chance, if you have that ability, try to fast the Saturday and the Sunday. Very, very simple. And it's nice because it'll kind of prepare you for Ramadan. The days are a little bit longer, and they're a little bit hotter, right? The summertime is coming up whenever that weather comes around, but it'll prepare you if it will. And the last but not least, that in the time of a fitna, in the moment of a fitna, be a person who only says things that will please Allah. Don't say things that will try to question Allah. May Allah Azza wa Jal protect us. I hope Allah Azza wa Jal allows us to benefit from which has been said, that we are able to implement these things in our lifetime, and that we do not allow the knowledge that we learn today to be held accountable against us by not implementing it, but by allowing it to be a witness for us on Yawm al-Qiyamah by actually implementing it in our lives. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. Wa jazakumullah khair wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Time for you can pray now.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did anybody have any questions on what I meant? Naam. Bismillah.
One of the things that you said, I couldn't correlate, if you can kind of correlate.
Yeah.
One of the questions she asked Salamah about the hijrah of the women, it's not mentioned in the Quran, and the ayah that you quoted. I couldn't correlate between the two.
Why, that was the answer, yeah. Because the Jahiliyyah used to commit a lot of illegal sexual intercourse. Because even that when they used to marry, the weird ways that they used to marry. Aisha radiallahu anha, she reported it, that for example, one of the ways they used to marry, may Allah protect us, but this is the way the Jahiliyyah used to do it, the ignorant times. A couple of men who wanted this woman, they would all sleep with her, one after another. After she gives birth, experts in matching father and child, they would say, this is the father, he gets to marry her. This is absolutely wrong. That's what Allah mentioned. And those people who committed illegal sexual intercourse, don't hold them accountable about that. Allah's telling you, don't sit there and say, oh, you were a person who used to do this in Jahiliyyah, used to do this. Allah knows what they did and they know what they did. And they'll ask Allah for forgiveness a lot. And this was the men and the women who used to do this, you see? That's an excellent question, by the way. I wondered the same thing. Why this was the response that Allah Azza wa Jal responded with. Jazakallah khair. Very good question, actually. Any other questions? Naam, bismillah.
You were talking about how sisters, we scare sisters
From the
not
masjid.
coming into the masjid.
Sometimes.
Saturday Breakfast Club, how many sisters are there?
I don't know,
One,
I can't see them.
2, 0. Like when we walk the breakfast, you don't see anybody sometimes. So,
We have to make it more welcoming.
well, what do you think that is though?
Oh, I don't know. He asked the question, he said, we have a breakfast club and the sisters don't participate in breakfast club. Maybe they're better cooks than us, and they like it. Yeah, they're busy working hard, mashallah. I don't know the answer to this. I don't know all the answers, just so you know. So maybe some other people in the masjid know more than me. Allahu A'lam.
They did Qiyam all night.
They were doing qiyam all night, maybe, mashallah. They're too tired now. And they have kids and responsibility. Don't forget, also think about this. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned that for the woman, she gets more rewarded praying at home. That doesn't mean that she shouldn't come to the masjid. Why? That's so that they don't become depressed or sad that they have children and they're holding them back from coming to the masjid. So if a woman has children and responsibilities like that, Allah Azza wa Jal gave her good news through the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that she's getting the reward of the jama'ah just by praying at home. So she doesn't have to be stressed and start figuring out to neglect her kids and things like that. That's why you'll find a lot of times some of the younger sisters are able to come to the masjid. They don't have that kind of responsibility. And that's why you'll find almost all of the wives of the Prophet used to pray in the masjid. Because a lot of them, their kids got older for those who had kids, and the ones who didn't, they didn't have that kind of responsibility. So they prayed in the masjid. You see? So maybe they also have the kind of responsibility at home. That's only my insight.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned spending more time with the family and the kids and all that. But nowadays in these challenging times that we live in, let's say, just giving you examples, certain people actually work in the city. By the time they come home, it's very late, it's bedtime for the kids. And then the only days they get is Saturdays and Sundays. Those are also spent on house chores. What do you suggest in terms of actually, spending time, and how should we, when a person is facing such kind of a challenge, should in fact, take out time for the kids?
Excellent question. He said in these times, for those who didn't hear, that there's a lot of brothers who they work in the city. By the time they come home from the city, in Manhattan, for example, the kids are already sleeping, it's bedtime, and the only quality time they have is the weekends. But the weekends, it's all chores and things like that. Wallahi, a narration that you might even cry from, to show you how helpful the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was. The Jariyat, the young girls of Medina, reported that when their mother used to give them chores and they didn't want to do them, they used to go find Sayyidina Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They used to grab him by the finger. You can imagine how small these girls are. They're holding his finger from how small their hands are, and they used to drag him all the way to their home to do their chores with them, because the Prophet was so helpful. So I'll tell you, do the chores with the kids. Make it like a family experience. We gotta wash dishes, guys. Let's go. Everybody do it together. We forget that, we want to give them responsibility and show them this, but there's no better way to establish responsibility than by leading by example. We have to be creative on how we establish time with them. Believe it or not, you might think that this is a silly idea, that you might do chores with the children. But the children are so appreciative that you're spending time with them. They're so appreciative. Even if the little things, that you told your son, go cut the grass, and you sit there and you go cut the grass with him. Things like that, and he might bring things up to you that you might have not expected. Spending time with them. But you know what the problem is? We're also so exhausted, right? So we go on TV, that's our Saturday day, right? It's Sunday, and then football season might come, and whatever you watch, and you just sit there, and that's when you catch up on Netflix and all this stuff. But as a man in this religion, it's stressful. There's a lot of responsibilities. One of my teachers said, if every single night you're not putting your head on the pillow because of how stressed you were by sitting with family, doing all of your responsibilities, silatul rahim, work, all of these things that you have to balance throughout the day, you did something wrong that day. These days off that we have that concept that just sit and relax and do nothing, maybe you can do that if you're not married. But you also shouldn't be, because you have responsibilities to your parents, your aunts, your uncles, and things like that. But you see, spending time is not just about Chuck E. Cheese. It's not just about let's go to Six Flags. We have to be very creative on how we do it. And I ask Allah Azza wa Jalla that He allows us to do that. Okay? Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you very much.